Alright everyone, testing. First we're going to go through a couple audio checks, make sure everything's set up properly this time. We're testing out the new HyperX headset, and therefore I'm actually going to be a little bit more smooth jazz sort of thing, rather than my usual hypernasal, attempting to make sure everything I say can be heard perfectly. So this segment is just a sound check. Now wait for the other members of 2_MK, the channel this is being restreamed on with my full permission, to tell me whether or not things are fine. Seems that I can actually relax my voice even more and I'll still be pretty audible apparently. That's good to know. But I don't think that there's going to be much that can be heard perfectly at this point. So I'm just going to continue from where I normally start. Today we're restreaming from the Rillian channel, and that would be me. And I'm going to be going forward with what we were dealing with yesterday, as well as going into some ranked, but without too much intention to actually go forward. So now the team has confirmed for me that I'm actually a little loud, and that means that the headset is even better than before. I can just drop my voice to its normal level and probably be able to be heard perfectly. I'll have the others let me know if anything serious kicks in and it gets bad. I may fall into the habit of talking louder because obviously we've been doing so all this time. Okay then. Well, shoutouts to HyperX and their sponsorship of the Capcom Pro Tour, and for apparently making some really high quality headphones. So as I said, it's going to be a little bit different for me because I'm not used to being able to use my normal voice for these things. But let's give it a shot. So my network match fight request is on. Playback settings for Colleen are on. You can find our Colleen bot at 2-mk.org. We're basically still finalizing the system for her, but I think I've got it down at this point. You can reference what I'll be doing for the point system while you're there if you're checking it out. And I may find some time on stream to actually directly explain it. Now for the final sound test, the team will let me know whether or not the game audio is actually enough to get over my speech. And then we'll begin on the rest of the game. Oh, she's so terrifying sometimes. So let's see. Unfortunately, Street Fighter doesn't give you any way to deal with this except by going out to the main menu or forming a PS party. Let's see what I can do about that briefly. Stream, of course, may take a hit while I'm doing the adjustment here. I'm just going to form an empty party and see what happens. I'm not really sure whether or not that will work directly, but it tends to make the game quieter. So using that, we'll see now if the game has quieted down enough. And then begin. So, one more confirmation to get from the crew, and I've been told that everything is okay. So, beginning the main lesson as of today. Yesterday we had a discussion on the types of opponent that you can meet within the game. We classify these opponents as people who move to pressure, people who move to close in, people who move to zone you, and people who move to frustrate you. There's also a fifth type of people who basically aim to play their character in whatever the way their character is most suited to be played. But they have to spend a lot more time doing character specialization, and they don't get to have as much success early on. Today we're going to be just trying to give a mnemonic for remembering this in terms of how you should actually try to remember the opponent type and how you should approach them based on your own fighting style. If you can identify your style out of what was in yesterday's stream or in the video when it is available on YouTube, please reference the previous video and you should be able to figure out what your style should be considered to be. And it should give you slight ideas as to what you're weak to if you just go all out with your style versus a style that is going all out on theirs. Now, since many games of this type actually do rely on the core and rock, paper, scissors things, I'm going to be explaining the method of doing this based somewhat on that. You should not take this to be a full explanation of anything. It's more so just a way to remember it. The first thing to understand is that we have to arbitrarily assign one of these to be rock. And today I'm going to assign the opponent I'm facing. We're going to assign this opponent type, which in this case is a zoner. Or probably a zoner. Yes, it's a zoner. To be rock. Zoners like to defend themselves by spacing. They like to put out heavy buttons. And they're good at beating characters who rely too much on pressure. Because you can't get your pressure started if you can't get in. And people who have pressure as their main way of dealing with things can be fairly easily frustrated after a while. I can speak for this myself because I am also a pressure player for the most part and don't necessarily do too well against zoners. I have a great zoner to train with, too technically, but that doesn't necessarily make it any easier. The reason being that if I try to play outright as a pressure character, this zoner is going to sit there and be really, really good at just holding the position in which I can't do random things without getting hurt. So I have to slow down my pressure, be careful. Sometimes not pressure at all even though I really want to. And very, very carefully not use certain buttons. However, I do know that the way zoners work in terms of jump-ins and so on, and that is to sweep, hold control of situations, jump at ranges where it's hard to anti-air them, and at timings where it's hard to anti-air them. And it creates this sort of situation where I'm twitchy, I really want to move and get in on them and start hitting buttons. Not unsafe buttons, just whatever I want. I want to get in there and hit them with a string of buttons they can't respond to. But they're waiting for that. They're ready for that. So I have to slow myself down a lot in order to beat them. I have to change my style from pressure, somewhat, to the style of frustrating the opponent or closing in very slowly. And we're going to call that paper for now. note that this becomes way too slow as an experience for many people who prefer pressure. I actually do have some skills in this, because I can be fairly patient when I'm ready, but eventually I start to get frustrated about just not being able to do as much as I want to. And pressure players at lower levels have this problem a lot more than I probably do. So if we consider zoners to be rock,
You win.
why is a zoner rock? Well, there's a specific way to think about how people play this game, and you have to start from people like me in order to understand it. If you start from the concept and perspective of what a pressure player is thinking, it makes it a lot clearer. Pressure in fighting games, especially at the lower levels, is based on a singular concept. My opponent does not have the reactions or the skills to stop what I'm doing. This would be very similar to if you believed that in order to have good defense, your opponent would need to be able to pick something that either matches you or defeats you in a very short space of time. So you are picking scissors and hoping that your opponent picks scissors as well, so you don't get hurt. And you just keep on picking scissors until something on their side fails. Because fighting games aren't really just rock, paper, scissors. You can consider them to be that, but